New Zealand's Navy has intercepted a floating haul of cocaine in the Pacific Ocean in what the country says is its largest drug bust ever. Well, of course, in a country like New Zealand, this would be its biggest drug bust ever, right? 3.2 tons, or about 3,200 kilos, was found drifting hundreds of kilometers northwest of New Zealand. Police believed it was destined for Australia, where it would have been enough to serve that market for a year. And Brian, what do we know now is the wholesale price of a kilo right now in Australia? Let's look that up. What do you think it is? I want to say, is it 100,000? I've heard that it fluctuates between $100,000 and $200,000. Now get your silly little pea brains around that. In 1987, in New York City, the wholesale price of a kilo fluctuated between $12,000 and $15,000. In Australia right now, it fluctuates between, it's hovering now around $300,000. So, because 1 gram of cocaine costs about $450. So you could say that a retailed kilo of cocaine costs about close to $500,000 for 1 kilo. So we thought this was fun. We thought we would do a little bit of math on this, right? Because if you watch our show, we get into the nitty gritty of the numbers. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about, Brian, the opportunity cost that is lost when a bust like this happens, which, by the way, nobody got busted. This was coke that a big haul that was found floating in the ocean, probably had a GPS tracking device on it. And what was going to happen was, it got dropped off by a big ship, an industrial ship. And it was going to become, picked up by fast boats, and then carted in to the shores of Australia. But what would 3,200 kilos, Brian, at $300,000, what is the total sum of that? 300, if we're assuming, right, so, but I'm going to assume, let's assume the low end. Let's assume they're getting it for the low, right? If the price right now of 1 kilo is $300,000 bulk, what would, at 3,200 kilos, how much is that? $960 million is the opportunity cost, is the loss that the traffickers on that end took, right? More or less. If we're, yes, that's what that entire load is going for. Now, of course, a load that size, even at 200,000, right? Say they're, the buyers are getting it in bulk and they're selling it out for $200,000 a kilo. That's still hundreds of millions of dollars. That's still about $500 million that is lost. But what is the loss? What is the production loss on that? What does that cost to put a load like that together? We ran up the numbers. What does it cost for a Colombian drug cartel to put together a shipment of 3,200 kilos? Well, we did a little bit of math. It cost the cartels, it's estimated that it cost the cartels in Colombia about $500 per kilo, 500 American dollars, from the time that they buy the leaves from the coca growers, mixing it up, buying the paste, putting it in the lab, turning it into a full kilo. Cost them about $500. So at 3,200 kilos, what is the math on that, Sir Brian? 1.6 million is all that they lost. Okay. So I don't know, yeah. Assuming what? That the manufacturers are the ones who sent it out. Right. Well, they probably made their money already. Sure. So either way, whether it's, because the question is, how do these deals get put together? And this is a question I asked Luis Chaparro when we were down in Sinaloa. How, when a big load like this, a multi-ton load, gets intercepted, who shoulders the loss? is half the money put down up front, right? That way the loss is split. I think it kind of depends, right? Either way, whether you're a drug trafficker from Australia, and I know, by the way, that you have to, the costs are a little bit higher because you have to pay people that work initially for the shipping company in Colombia, probably at the port of Uraba. That's where most of the cocaine that comes out on the Pacific side comes out of. It's at the port of Buenaventura or the port of Uraba, hence Los Urabeños, the biggest drug trafficking organization in Colombia. You got to pay people off. You got to pay generals off. You got to pay shipping people off, etc. But I mean, it's nominal, right? Even if you're adding another $500,000, $1 million onto your bribery costs, say it's $2.5 million. Either way, these guys can afford it, right? So say it's split between the risk is split between the two parties, right? The buyers and the manufacturers. That's only a $1.25 million loss on either side. So it's like the Colombians could afford to lose 20 loads a day. 1.25 is nothing. You just get one of these through and you split. I mean, the profit is like the GDP of like most of these little island countries, right? Like the yearly GDP of Trinidad and Tobago is one successful load of cocaine that makes it to the shores of Australia. And by the way, Brian, if I'm a drug trafficker, if I'm a manufacturer out of Colombia, I'm absolutely going to say, hey, you don't have to put any money down. We'll float the $2 million risk, because if it gets to Australia, I'm going to say I want 25% of the money that comes back. You know what I mean? Is that how it works? Because I feel like they're just, the amount that they supply and sell, they're not even worried about that. Yeah, I'm not sure. It is quantity. I'm not sure how it will. Like there's it's just like real estate. There's many ways to structure a deal. There's many ways, right? So sure, if it costs them $1.6 million to get a package ready with 3.2 tons, they could say to their buyer, we'll charge you double. That's all we're going to charge you. We're going to charge you $3 million and we'll just take a profit of 1.5, right? But Colombian traffickers, they're incentivized to make the most money. So in my opinion, it's like, no. Our people are going to get it on a ship as far as New Zealand, right? That's going to cost you $5,000 a kilo. So we're going to make a minimum, $50 million if the load goes through, and then your people are going to pick it up and take the risk of moving it to Australia. That I would assume that's how it works. It's not like simple, if they're only investing 1.5 million, they're not content with just a quick 50% markup. They want a share of the back end, as we say in show business, right? It's like how an actor Tom Cruise goes into his movies. He doesn't take a salary. He says, I'm going to take 20% of the gross or whatever. But this is it's a perfect example of why it is impossible to stop drug trafficking. When you can make cocaine that cheaply, you can take so many losses. In untold, you can lose 90% of your product and still make a profit. It'd be one thing if cocaine was manufactured in Los Angeles. I paid $10 for an English muffin with butter and jam today at Jones on 3rd. By the way, never go there if you live in LA. Plus another $5 for a cup of coffee. I bet it would cost, so I don't know what it would cost to make wholesale cocaine in a first world country. But in a place like Colombia, it's going to be where inflation hasn't really touched it. You just can do this forever. It's never going to end. So I thought this was kind of fascinating. New Zealand's Navy deployed, I just want to read the end of that article. New Zealand's Navy deployed a vessel to retrieve the massive shipment last week, which comprised of 81 bales of cocaine. Yeah. We believe we have dealt a significant blow to an international criminal syndicate's operation. Well, isn't that what they always say? Isn't that their opinion? Now, certainly some Australians are taking a big hit out of this, but it virtually doesn't put a dent into where it actually counts, which is in the manufacturer's pockets. This is the equivalent for Colombians. It's just a scratch on the balance sheet, right? I mean, day and night, loads like this are moving out of the ports on the Pacific coast of Colombia. And it's just like, I bet the kingpin didn't even hear about this. He just, at the end of the month, he just looks through to see how many loads got through. He just needs to make sure a few more are getting through that get intercepted. That's all it is. That's all. At that level, it's just a numbers game. How many did more get through that got intercepted? Great. We can keep eating. And in fact, no, I take that back. Did enough get through that we made a profit? Did 2 out of 10, when you're dealing with Australia. In America, it's different because your loads aren't worth as much, right? So if a big load gets intercepted, that costs more because you paid to bring it up and you weren't going to get as much money back. But when kilos cost almost $400,000 wholesale, you can get 1 out of 10 through, and you can fuck off for the next decade if you want. Okay. We love Colombian drug traffickers. Keep doing what you're doing.